Princess Zarath stood on the crystal balcony of her orbital palace, watching her husband tend to his garden. The sight still amazed her. Marcus Chen, the human she had married 6 months ago, moved between the flowering plants with such care. His large hands, which should have been clumsy according to everything her people believed about humans, touched each leaf like it was made of precious glass. "The earth roses are blooming again," Marcus called out, his voice warm with happiness. He held up a red flower, its petals perfect in the artificial sunlight of the space station. "Would you like one for your hair tonight?" Zarath smiled, her blue skin shimmering in the light. Her people, the Valerians, were known across the galaxy for their intelligence and advanced technology. They had ruled star systems when humans were still learning to make fire. Yet this simple human gesture made her feel more special than any royal ceremony ever had. "That would be lovely," she replied, walking down the steps to join him in the garden. Marcus was exactly what the Galactic Council expected from his species. When the humans had joined the Council 5 years ago, everyone knew they were the youngest race in space. They were strong enough to do manual work and smart enough to follow instructions, but they lacked the wisdom of older civilizations. Most importantly, they were peaceful. Humans seemed to apologize for everything and avoided conflict whenever possible. Marcus fit this image perfectly. He was tall and broad-shouldered, but he used his strength only to carry heavy things or reach high shelves. He spent his days reading poetry, writing in his journal, and growing plants from his home world. When diplomats visited, he would bow politely and speak softly, always asking if he could bring them tea or show them his latest paintings. The marriage had been arranged by the Galactic Council to strengthen ties between Earth and the Valerian Empire. Zarath had expected a political partnership, nothing more. Her father, Emperor Vextal, had chosen Marcus from a list of suitable human males. The requirements were simple: educated, healthy, and most importantly, gentle. "The humans are like children in many ways," her father had explained. "Strong children who need guidance. This Marcus Chen has been recommended by their leaders. He was some kind of teacher before this arrangement. Teachers are always peaceful people. But something unexpected had happened in the months since their wedding. Zarath had grown to genuinely care for Marcus. He was kind in ways she had never experienced. When she felt stressed about her royal duties, he would brew tea from earth herbs and listen to her problems. When she had nightmares about her responsibilities, he would tell her stories about Earth's history until she fell asleep. "You seem thoughtful today," Marcus said, carefully placing the rose behind her ear. His fingers were gentle against her skin. "Is everything all right?" "I was just thinking about how different you are from what I expected," Zarath admitted. "When our marriage was first arranged, I thought I would be stuck with someone boring and simple." Marcus laughed, but there was something strange in his eyes for just a moment. "I suppose I am pretty boring. Just a teacher who likes gardening and old books." "You are not boring," Zarath said firmly. "You are surprising." It was true. Marcus had skills that seemed unusual for a simple teacher. He could cook meals from dozens of different cultures, as if he had traveled across many worlds. He knew 6 different Earth languages and could write beautiful poetry in all of them. Sometimes she caught him staring out at the stars with an expression she could not understand, as if he was remembering something important. "Would you like to walk through the rest of the garden?" Marcus asked, offering his arm. "The lilies from New Tokyo are starting to bloom. They only open their petals when 2 people who care about each other walk past them together." Zarath took his arm, enjoying the solid warmth of him beside her. This was why she had fallen for her human husband. He knew exactly what to say to make her feel special, but he never seemed to be trying too hard. Everything about him felt genuine. They walked slowly through the paths between the raised garden beds. Marcus had designed the entire garden himself, mixing plants from Earth with compatible species from other worlds. The result was beautiful, but it also showed planning skills that impressed Zarath. The layout was perfect for both growing plants and creating peaceful walking paths. "Marcus," she said as they stopped to admire a fountain he had built from crystals and metal, "what did you do before you became a teacher? You seem to know so much about so many things." For just a second, Marcus's hand tightened on her arm. Then he smiled his usual gentle smile. "I traveled a lot when I was younger. Saw different places, met different people. You pick things up when you move around." It was the same answer he always gave when she asked about his past. Not exactly a lie, but not the whole truth either. Zarath had learned not to push too hard. All humans seemed to be private about their lives before joining galactic society. Their leaders said it was because they were embarrassed about their primitive history. "I love that you traveled," she said instead. "It makes you interesting to talk to. Most Valyrian nobles have never left our home system." "Travel teaches you things," Marcus agreed. "Sometimes you learn about other people. Sometimes you learn about yourself." They reached the center of the garden where Marcus had built a small gazebo surrounded by climbing vines. Inside, he had placed comfortable chairs and a table where they often ate breakfast together. On the walls, he had hung some of his paintings. They were good, showing scenes from Earth and other worlds he claimed to have visited as a tourist. "I have a gift for you," Marcus said suddenly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. "I finished it this morning." Inside the box was a necklace made from metals and gems from both their worlds. The design was intricate, showing the symbols of both Earth and the Valyrian Empire twisted together in a pattern that looked like growing vines. "Marcus, it is beautiful," Zareth breathed. "When did you learn to make jewelry?" "Another thing I picked up while traveling," he said. But again there was that strange look in his eyes. "Here, let me put it on you." As he fastened the necklace around her neck, Zareth felt a wave of affection for this gentle human who had become so important to her. Whatever secrets he might have from his past, she trusted that they could not be too important. Marcus was exactly what he seemed, a kind, creative man who loved her and wanted to make her happy. "Thank you," she whispered, turning to face him. "I love it." She stopped, realizing what she had almost said. They had been married for months, but neither of them had spoken about love. It was supposed to be a political arrangement. Marcus smiled and touched her face softly. "I love you too, Princess, more than I ever expected to love anyone." As they kissed in the garden surrounded by flowers from two worlds, Zareth felt completely happy. She had a husband who cared for her, a beautiful home and peace throughout her father's empire. What more could she possibly want? She had no idea that everything was about to change. The formal dining hall of the orbital palace gleamed with crystal and precious metals from across the Valyrian Empire. Tonight, Emperor Vextal was hosting important guests from the Hegemony, a powerful military alliance that controlled several star systems. Zareth sat beside Marcus at the long table, watching him cut his food with perfect manners. Ambassador Crixtal, the Hegemony's chief diplomat, was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. He had been talking for most of the dinner about trade agreements and military cooperation. His voice was smooth, but Zareth noticed how his black eyes kept studying the other guests, as if he was looking for weaknesses. "The Hegemony has always been interested in working with peaceful species," Crixtal said, reaching for his wine glass with one of his upper arms. "We believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Zareth saw Marcus's hand pause for just a moment as he reached for his water. It was such a small thing that no one else would have noticed. But she had learned to read her husband's subtle reactions. "Of course," Emperor Vextal replied. "The Valyrian Empire has always valued peace above all else. We are fortunate to live in stable times." "Indeed," Crixtal agreed. His eyes moved to Marcus and his voice took on a tone that made Zareth uncomfortable. "Though I must admit I am curious about your recent alliance with the humans. Such a young species. Do they truly offer anything valuable to advanced civilizations like ours?" The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Several other guests turned to look at Marcus, waiting to see how the human would respond. Zareth felt angry at the insult, but she also felt curious about what Marcus would say. Marcus smiled politely and dabbed his mouth with his napkin. "I think humans are still learning our place in the galaxy, Ambassador. We try to contribute what we can." "How modest," Crixtal said, but his tone made it clear he did not mean it as a compliment. "I have read reports about human military capabilities, quite limited from what I understand. Your people seem to rely more on enthusiasm than actual strategy." Zareth saw Marcus's knuckles turn white where he gripped his glass. For a second, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual gentle expression. "We do our best," Marcus said quietly. "I am sure you do," Crixtal continued. "Though I confess I find it amusing when humans speak of military matters. Your species has such charming ideas about warfare, all that talk about honor and protecting the innocent. Very primitive." This time Marcus said nothing at all. He just stared at his plate. but Zareth could see tension in his shoulders that had not been there before. Around the table, other guests began talking about different topics, but she kept watching her husband. The rest of the dinner passed without incident, but Zareth noticed that Marcus barely spoke. When the guests finally left, she found him standing on their private balcony looking out at the stars in the direction of Earth's solar system. "Are you all right?" she asked, joining him at the railing. "Fine," Marcus said, but his voice sounded different, harder somehow. "Just thinking." "About what Ambassador Krikstal said?" Marcus turned to look at her, and for a moment she saw something in his face that she had never seen before. It was not anger exactly, but something colder and more frightening. "He does not know what he is talking about," Marcus said simply. "You should not let him upset you," Zareth said, taking his hand. "Everyone knows the hegemony thinks they are better than everyone else. My father only invited them to be polite." Marcus squeezed her hand gently, and his expression softened back to normal. "You are right. I should not let ignorant comments bother me." But later that night, Zareth woke up to find Marcus's side of the bed empty. She went looking for him and found him in his study, sitting at his desk with several books open in front of him. In the dim light, she could see that they were not his usual poetry books. "Marcus, what are you reading?" He looked up quickly and closed one of the books, but not before she caught a glimpse of the title: Advanced Tactical Analysis of Multi-Vector Assault Strategies. It was definitely not poetry. "Just some old Earth history," he said, standing up and moving to block her view of the desk. "I could not sleep, so I thought I would do some reading." "History?" Zareth stepped closer, trying to see around him. "What kind of history?" "Nothing interesting," Marcus said, gently turning her toward the door. "Come on, let us go back to bed. You have meetings with the Trade Council tomorrow." As they walked back to their bedroom, Zareth felt confused. In all the months they had been married, she had never seen Marcus read anything except literature and philosophy. Why would he suddenly be interested in military tactics? The next few days were normal, but Zareth found herself paying attention to things she had never noticed before. Like the way Marcus always sat facing the door in restaurants, or how his eyes automatically tracked movement when new people entered a room. She also realized that despite his gentle manner, people seemed to instinctively give him space when he walked through crowds. Then, 3 days after the dinner with Ambassador Krikstal, something happened that changed everything. Zareth was working in her office when Marcus's personal communication device made a sound she had never heard before. It was not his usual soft chime, but a sharp, urgent beeping. Marcus looked at the device and his face went completely pale. "I have to take this," he said, moving toward his study, but he was not fast enough. Before he could close the door, Zareth saw the message on his screen. It was brief, but the header made her blood run cold. Terran Defense Command, Classification Ghost Protocol, Urgent Response Required. Marcus saw her looking and quickly turned off the device. For a long moment they stared at each other. "Marcus," Zareth said slowly, "what is Ghost Protocol?" "I can explain," Marcus said, but his voice was different now. All the gentle softness was gone, replaced by something sharp and controlled. "But you might not like what you hear." "Try me," Zareth said, crossing her arms. Marcus looked at her for a long time, as if he was making a difficult decision. Finally, he sighed and sat down heavily in his chair. "There are things about humans that your people were not told when we joined the Galactic Council," he said slowly. "Things we thought it was better to keep private." "What kind of things?" "The kind that might make other species nervous about having us around," Marcus said. He looked out the window at the stars again, and she saw that haunted expression return to his eyes. "The kind that might make them think twice about letting human civilians live on their space stations." Zareth felt a cold fear growing in her chest. "Marcus, you are scaring me." "I know," he said quietly, "and I am sorry for that. But I think it is time you learned the truth about your harmless human husband." Outside their window, the stars seemed to glitter with a new kind of danger. The alarm started screaming at 0347 station time, jolting Zareth from sleep. Red emergency lights flooded their bedroom as Marcus sat up instantly, completely alert in a way that seemed impossible for someone who had been asleep seconds before. "What is happening?" Zareth asked, but Marcus was already moving toward the window. He stared out at space, his body tense like a hunting animal. "Ships," he said quietly. "A lot of them." Zareth joined him at the window and gasped. Dozens of dark vessels were emerging from hyperspace around the Valerian homeworld below. They were massive angular ships that looked like they were built for only one purpose: war. "Hegemony fleet," Marcus said, and his voice carried a certainty that chilled her. "Standard intimidation formation. 3 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, support vessels. Classic multi-vector assault positioning." "How do you know that?" Zareth asked, but before Marcus could answer, her father's voice echoed through the station's communication system. "All residents remain calm. This is a diplomatic situation. Report to assigned emergency stations and await further instructions." Marcus was already pulling on clothes, moving with quick, efficient motions. "We need to get to the command center. Your father will need accurate intelligence about what he is facing." "Marcus, slow down," Zareth said, struggling to keep up as he strode toward the door. "How do you know about ship formations? You said you were a teacher." "I was many things before I became your husband," Marcus replied without stopping. "Right now, we need to focus on keeping you alive." They reached the command center to find organized chaos. Valerian officers were rushing between control stations while Emperor Vextal stood at the central display, looking overwhelmed. The holographic projection showed the Hegemony fleet in perfect detail, their weapons powered but not yet firing. "Father, what do they want?" Zareth asked. "Unconditional surrender," the Emperor replied grimly. "Ambassador Crixtal is demanding that we submit to Hegemony rule or face the consequences. He says they are tired of dealing with weak civilizations through diplomacy." Marcus stepped closer to the tactical display, his eyes moving across it with frightening intensity. "Show me their formation details. Weapon signatures, shield frequencies, ship classifications." Admiral Torgan, the Valerian fleet commander, looked confused. Why would a human civilian need that information? "Because this human might be able to help," Marcus said quietly. There was something new in his voice now, something that made everyone in the room pay attention. "Unless you have a better plan for dealing with a force that outnumbers your fleet 3-1. The Admiral activated the detailed display, and Marcus studied it for exactly 37 seconds. Then he began pointing to specific ships. "Their command vessel is the heavy cruiser on the left flank. See how it is positioned slightly behind the main formation? That is where Crixtal will be directing operations. The destroyer screen is designed to prevent flanking maneuvers, but they have left a gap in Sector 7 that suggests they expect you to retreat toward the nebula." Everyone stared at Marcus. Zareth felt like she was seeing a completely different person wearing her husband's face. "How could you possibly know that?" Admiral Torgun demanded. "Experience," Marcus said simply. "The question is, do you want to survive this, or do you want to keep asking about my qualifications?" Before anyone could respond, the communication system crackled to life. Ambassador Crixtal's face appeared on the main screen, his forearms spread in a gesture of false reasonableness. "Emperor Vextal, I trust you have considered our offer. The Hegemony is prepared to be generous to those who submit willingly. Your people will be allowed to continue their lives under our protection. And if we refuse?" Emperor Vextal asked. Crixtal smiled with too many teeth. "Then we will demonstrate why the Hegemony has never lost a military engagement. Your orbital stations will be destroyed. Your planet will be occupied. Your people will learn to obey through suffering instead of wisdom." Marcus stepped forward into the view of the communication pickup. "Hello again, Ambassador." Crixtal's expression changed when he saw Marcus. Something like confusion flickered across his features. "The human? I did not expect to see you in a military command center during a crisis. Should you not be hiding somewhere safe?" "I go where my wife goes," Marcus said calmly. "Though I have to admit, I am curious about your tactical setup out there. Very textbook." "Textbook?" Crixtal's voice carried a note of irritation. "Standard Hegemony doctrine," Marcus continued conversationally. "Overwhelming force, intimidation display, demand for immediate surrender. It has worked for you before, I am sure, against unprepared enemies. Are you suggesting the Valerians are prepared?" Crixtal laughed. "Their fleet consists of 12 patrol vessels and a ceremonial flagship. They have no military doctrine worth mentioning." "No," Marcus agreed, "but they have something else." "And what is that?" Marcus smiled, and Zareth saw something predatory in his expression that made her step back involuntarily. "They have me." Crixtal stared at the screen for a moment, then laughed louder. "One human? What possible difference could that make?" "Let me show you," Marcus said quietly. He turned to Admiral Torgan. "Power up your weapons and target their command ship. That will start a war." the Admiral protested. The war already started when they came here with weapons charged, Marcus replied. The only question is whether we fight smart or fight stupid. Emperor Vextal looked between Marcus and his military officers. What are you suggesting? Trust me, Marcus said. For the next hour, let me do what I was trained to do. And what were you trained to do? Zareth asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. Marcus looked at her with sad eyes. I was trained to win wars, Princess. No matter the cost. On the screen, Ambassador Krikstal was still laughing. I will give you one more chance, Emperor. Surrender now or watch your people die. Marcus stepped closer to the communication pickup. Ambassador, before you do something you will regret, you might want to check with your intelligence division. Ask them to run a search for a human named Marcus Chen. But use the military databases, not the civilian ones. Something in Marcus's tone made Krikstal's laughter fade. Why would I waste time researching a gardening human? Because, Marcus said quietly, you might learn why the hegemony has standing orders never to engage human military forces without overwhelming superiority. For the first time since his arrival, Krikstal looked uncertain. What are you talking about? Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device Zareth had never seen before. He pressed a sequence of buttons, and the device emitted a series of coded signals. I just activated something called Ghost Protocol, Marcus said. Your intelligence people will know what that means. You have approximately 15 minutes to withdraw your fleet before the situation becomes very complicated for everyone involved. You are bluffing, Krikstal said, but his voice carried less conviction than before. Princess, Marcus said without taking his eyes off the screen, you might want to sit down. This is going to be a very educational day. Outside the command center windows, the hegemony fleet maintained its threatening formation, but something was changing. Deep in space, other ships were beginning to move toward the Valerian system, ships that flew no flags and answered to no government except one coded signal from a human who grew flowers and wrote poetry. The ghost was awake, and the galaxy was about to remember why humans were never really harmless at all. The first explosion shook the entire orbital station. Emergency lighting bathed the command center in red as reports flooded in from across the station's defensive perimeter. Hegemony boarding parties have breached sections 7 through 12. A communications officer reported, his voice tight with panic. Station security is falling back on all fronts. Emperor Vextal looked helplessly at his military advisors. How many troops do we have on the station? 43 security guards, Admiral Torgan replied grimly. They were not equipped for military assault. Marcus moved to a secondary console and began entering commands with practiced speed. Palace schematics, security systems, life support controls, he muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. Good. The basic layout has not changed much since the original blueprints. How do you know the original blueprints? Zareth asked, but Marcus was already moving toward the weapon lockers. Princess, I need you to stay here with your father, Marcus said, pulling on a combat vest that looked far too familiar on his frame. Do not leave this room until I come back for you. Where are you going? She demanded. Marcus checked the charge on an energy weapon with movements that spoke of long experience, to show our guests that Valerian hospitality has limits. Before anyone could stop him, Marcus was gone, moving through the corridors with purpose that had nothing to do with his gentle poet persona. Through the command center's security monitors, Zareth watched her husband transform into someone she did not recognize. The hegemony soldiers were advancing through the station in standard formation, overwhelming the scattered security teams with superior numbers and firepower. They moved like professionals, but they moved predictably. Marcus moved like something else entirely. The first squad never saw him coming. Using maintenance corridors that did not appear on standard maps, Marcus positioned himself above their advance route. When they passed below, he dropped into their midst like a falling shadow. The entire engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. How is he doing that? Admiral Torgan whispered, staring at the monitors. Marcus had somehow acquired hegemony weapons and was using them with deadly efficiency. But more disturbing was the way he moved through the station. He knew exactly where to go, exactly how to use the environment against his enemies. Blast doors became traps. Gravity wells became weapons. Even the decorative fountains became tactical advantages in his hands. He is hurting them, Zareth realized, studying the tactical display. He is not just fighting them, he is controlling where they go. It was true. Marcus was systematically driving the hegemony forces away from critical areas and into prepared killing zones. The random security station was becoming a maze where every corridor led exactly where he wanted the invaders to go. Zarath's communication device chimed with an incoming message. The caller identification made her blood freeze. Ghost Actual, Priority Alpha. Who is Ghost Actual? She asked aloud. Emperor Vextal moved to another console. I am receiving similar communications from across the system. Ships identifying themselves with human military codes I have never heard of. On the main display, new contacts were appearing throughout the Valerian system, ships that seemed to emerge from empty space, moving with coordinated precision toward the hegemony fleet. They were smaller than the hegemony vessels, but there were many of them, and they moved like they knew exactly what they were doing. This is impossible, Admiral Torgan said. Our sensors showed no human ships in the system before the attack. Marcus's voice crackled over the communication system. Command, this is Ghost. Station is secure. Hegemony forces neutralized or contained. Request permission to coordinate with incoming assets. Ghost? Emperor Vextal asked. Marcus, what does that mean? It means, Marcus replied, and his voice carried a weight of authority that made everyone listen, that I was not entirely honest about my background when we met. The command center doors opened and Marcus walked in, but he was not the gentleman who had left 20 minutes before. His movements were economical and precise. His eyes swept the room with professional assessment. Even the way he held himself had changed, radiating confidence and controlled danger. Princess, he said, and his voice was gentler when he looked at her. I owe you an explanation. But first we need to deal with the immediate threat. He moved to the tactical display and began entering commands. New information flooded the screens, showing detailed intelligence about every ship in the hegemony fleet. Where did this data come from? Admiral Torgan demanded. Human intelligence assets, Marcus replied calmly. We have been tracking hegemony movements for months. We knew this attack was coming. We, Zarath asked. Marcus looked at her with sad eyes. My name is Colonel Marcus Chen, formerly of Terran Defense Command. Designation, Ghost. I have been operating under deep cover for the past 18 months. The words hit Zarath like physical blows. Deep cover? Our marriage was a lie? No, Marcus said firmly. The mission was real, but everything I felt for you was real too. That was never part of the plan. Before Zarath could respond, the tactical display lit up with new activity. The human ships had engaged the hegemony fleet, and the results were immediate and devastating. Despite being outnumbered, the human vessels moved with such coordination that they seemed to anticipate every hegemony maneuver. How are they doing that? Emperor Vextal asked in amazement. Standard human military doctrine, Marcus explained, his attention focused on the battle. We do not fight fair. We fight smart. On the screen, hegemony ships found themselves isolated and surrounded as human vessels used tactics that seemed impossible. They appeared where they should not be, struck where they were not expected, and vanished before counterattacks could be launched. Ambassador Krixtal is requesting immediate communication, the communications officer reported. Put him through, Marcus said. Krixtal appeared on screen, and his earlier confidence was completely gone. What are you? He demanded. I am exactly what I told you I was, Marcus replied calmly. A human. The question is whether you understand what that really means. Your fleet was supposed to be ceremonial, Krixtal protested. Your military doctrine was supposed to be primitive. Marcus smiled without humor. We let you think that because it was convenient. Humans have learned that being underestimated is a powerful tactical advantage. The battle display showed hegemony ships trying desperately to regroup, but human forces had already disrupted their formations beyond recovery. What had begun as an overwhelming assault had become a rout. This is impossible, Krixtal said. We outnumber you 3-1. Numbers do not matter when you are fighting the wrong war, Marcus replied. You came here expecting to intimidate peaceful civilians. Instead, you found something very different. What do you want? Krixtal asked, his voice defeated. Marcus looked at Zarath, then at her father. That is not my decision to make. I am just a gardener who happens to know something about tactics. Emperor Vextal stepped forward. Ambassador Krixtal, you will withdraw your forces immediately and never threaten Valerian space again. If you refuse, my human military advisor will demonstrate additional capabilities you have not yet seen. Your human advisor? Crystal looked confused. Oh yes, Emperor Vextal said with growing confidence. It seems we have been underestimating our new allies as much as you have. As the hegemony fleet began its retreat, Zarath stared at the man she thought she knew. Marcus Chen, the gentle poet, was gone, replaced by someone far more dangerous and complex. Who are you really? She whispered. Marcus looked at her with eyes full of regret and hope. I am still the man who loves you, Princess, but I am also the man who was sent to protect you and your people from threats they never saw coming. And now, Marcus said quietly, we find out if you can love a ghost. 3 hours after the last hegemony ship limped away from Valerian space, Marcus stood in his garden, carefully replanting flowers that had been damaged during the station's emergency lockdown. His hands, which had moved with deadly precision during the battle, now handled the delicate petals with the same gentle care Zarath remembered from their early days together. The earth roses survived, he said, without looking up as she approached. They are tougher than they look. Zarath stood at the edge of the garden path, unsure how to approach this man who was both her husband and a stranger. Like humans, apparently, Marcus smiled sadly. I suppose that is fair. The past few hours had been filled with revelations that changed everything Zarath thought she knew about the galaxy. The human ships that had appeared so suddenly were not a rescue fleet. They were part of a permanent network that had been in place since humans joined the Galactic Council. Teachers, traders, diplomats, and other harmless humans stationed throughout known space were actually highly trained operatives, all connected by communication systems no other species had detected. How long has this been going on? She asked. Since the beginning, Marcus replied, finally looking at her. When humanity petitioned to join the Galactic Council, we were honest about our technological capabilities, but we were not entirely honest about our strategic capabilities. You lied to everyone. We let everyone believe what they wanted to believe, Marcus corrected gently. Most species see a young civilization and assume we are simple. We decided not to correct that assumption. Marcus had explained some of it during the debriefing with her father and the military council. Humanity had observed galactic politics for decades before making contact. They had seen how established powers treated newcomers and had developed a long-term strategy for survival. Instead of trying to match the military might of older civilizations, they had chosen to become invisible. Every human in galactic society is exactly what they appear to be, Marcus had told the stunned council. Teachers really do teach. Traders really do trade. Diplomats really do negotiate. But they also watch and listen and report. And when necessary, they act. So our marriage was just another assignment, Zarath said now, trying to keep the hurt out of her voice. Marcus set down his gardening tools and stood to face her. It started that way. The mission was to establish close ties with Valerian leadership and monitor potential threats to the region. Marriage to you was the obvious solution. How romantic. But that is not what happened. Marcus continued urgently. I was supposed to maintain emotional distance. I was supposed to play a role and gather intelligence. I was not supposed to fall in love with you. Zarath wanted to believe him, but everything felt different now. How can I trust anything you say? You have been lying to me for months. Because, Marcus said quietly, if this had just been a mission, I would have left with the other ships an hour ago. Ghost operatives do not stay in one place after their cover is blown. We disappear and start over somewhere else. He gestured around the garden they had built together. But I am still here asking you to forgive me for keeping secrets that were not mine to tell. And if I cannot forgive you? Marcus looked out at the stars where human ships were still patrolling Valerian space. Then I will accept that I lost the most important thing in my life because I was too good at my job. Zarath studied his face, looking for signs of deception. But the man standing before her was still recognizably the husband she had fallen in love with. The gentleness was real, even if it coexisted with capabilities she had never imagined. Show me, she said finally. Show you what? Everything. I want to understand who you really are. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. He led her to his study, where he activated hidden controls that revealed equipment she had never seen before. Banks of communication devices, tactical displays, and data storage systems filled spaces that had appeared to contain only bookshelves. This is how we coordinate across the galaxy, he explained. showing her the communication network. Every human operative reports through encrypted channels. We track ship movements, political developments, potential threats, like the hegemony. We have been watching them for 2 years. Their expansion pattern was predictable. We knew they would eventually target the Valerian Empire. Zareth stared at the complex systems her husband had hidden in plain sight. Why did you not warn us sooner? Because, Marcus said, early warnings create suspicion. Better to let the threat develop naturally, and then respond with overwhelming force. It sends a clearer message to other potential aggressors. What message? Marcus activated a galactic map that showed human positions throughout known space. There were far more red dots than Zareth had ever imagined possible. That attacking human allies is a mistake that will be punished quickly and decisively, he said. Ambassador Krikstal will report back to the hegemony leadership. They will spread the word to other militant factions. The galaxy will remember that humans are not as harmless as they appear. But you are harmless, Zareth protested. You write poetry and grow flowers. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the battle it reached his eyes. I do write poetry, and I do grow flowers, and I love you more than anything else in the universe. But I am also a weapon that my people pointed at anyone who might threaten the things I care about. He moved closer to her, his voice becoming softer. The truth is, Princess, no human is ever really harmless. We are a species that conquered our own planet through warfare, then learned to live in peace with each other. We carry both capabilities inside us always, and that is terrifying. It should be, Marcus agreed, but it is also why you will never have to fear anyone who threatens your people, while humans are your allies. Zareth thought about everything she had witnessed during the battle. The coordination between human forces, the way Marcus had moved through the station like he owned it, the casual efficiency with which he had neutralized a superior enemy force. How many of you are there? She asked. Enough, Marcus said simply. Scattered throughout the galaxy, living normal lives and waiting for signals that might never come. Teachers and traders and diplomats who are also soldiers when they need to be. And you? What happens to you now that everyone knows what you are? Marcus took her hands in his. That depends on you. If you can accept that your husband is both a gentle gardener and a deadly warrior, then I stay here and continue to be both. If you cannot, then Ghost disappears and Marcus Chen becomes just another legend. Zareth looked into his eyes and saw the same love that had grown between them over months of quiet mornings and peaceful evenings. But now she also saw the strength that had protected her and her people when diplomacy failed. I have one condition, she said finally. Anything? No, more lies. Ever. I want to know everything about this network, about your missions, about the threats you are watching for. If we are going to be married, we are going to be partners in everything. Marcus smiled with relief and pulled her close. I can live with that arrangement. Good, Zareth said, surprising herself by smiling back. Because I think I am going to enjoy being married to a ghost. Outside their window, human patrol ships continued their vigilant watch over Valerian space. The message had been sent and received throughout the galaxy. Humans were still the youngest species in galactic society, and they were still willing to work for peace through diplomacy and cooperation. But they were never, ever harmless. As Marcus kissed her in the garden where earth roses bloomed beside alien flowers, Zareth realized that their marriage had become something more than either of them had planned. It was a symbol of what humans really offered to the galaxy, the promise that those who chose peace would always be protected by those who were very, very good at war. And in the end, that was exactly what the universe